Well, hello, and welcome to the MilVet Podcast. Your podcast hosts are Brendan Aronson, Tim Shaw, and Beau Higgins. We are military veterans, entrepreneurs, and investors. But most importantly, we strive to empower military service members, veterans, and their families. We believe that all veterans deserve a career that fires them up, a career in which you can learn, you can earn, and you can build a world class network. On this podcast, we interview civilian and military veteran leaders who are incredible founders, writers, thinkers, and investors. My primary goal is to inspire you to achieve great things. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the MilVet Podcast. I am your host, Beau Higgins, and I have the pleasure today to be joined by my friend Tom Lynch, and excited to talk about his journey, as we do every week, to learn about others' journeys, into the space. For those that may not be familiar with the MilVet provides an executive platform for veterans that are interested primarily into private equity, venture capital, and founder-based opportunities in portfolio companies. We have a great podcast that you're watching now, hopefully, and you can sign up for at TheMilVet.org. Definitely check out TheMilVet.org. It's a whole new website. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can check out our podcast. You can check out the jobs we have open. You can check out events we may have coming up in your city. So thanks for watching us today, and excited to jump in with Tom. So Tom, over to you, man. Great to have you here, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days, man.
Thanks, Beau. Really appreciate it. And I'm honored to be invited to speak with you today. I am a founder and managing partner of a real estate private equity firm called Iron Point Partners. We started it, my brief background and journey is, I grew up in a Navy family. My dad served for 32 years as a surface warfare officer in the Navy. Retired as a two-star. He's probably the guy you want to get on this podcast. I remember when he retired in the mid-90s, he had never had to put a resume together, never had to get a job. It was always his detailer telling him where to go, as many of the listeners here today can relate to and understand. But so I grew up in a Navy family. Went to high school here in the Washington, D.C. area. My dad was stationed here at the Pentagon, and then on the Hill, and then deployed. And my mom was sick of moving, so I was lucky that I was able to stay in the same house, same town, junior high all the way through high school. Ended up going to college, Dartmouth College, which was a great experience for me. At that time in my life, coming out of high school, I thought my dad did the Navy thing, my dad did the military thing. Quite frankly, if you remember, Beau, you do, maybe some of your listeners don't. Late 80s, early 90s, the peace dividend, and everybody thought with the wall coming down, and our democracy and open society and freedoms had won, and we thought this was going to be a big peace era for us. And so for me, just thinking about what I wanted to do, I thought, hey, my dad's done the military thing. I'm going to go conquer the business world and see where that brings me. And I ended up at Dartmouth College, and they didn't have ROTC, and I was sort of regretting, by my sophomore, junior year in college, I kind of thought, wow, I missed the window to serve, and at least in the military. And I thought, missed the window, but okay. And I did what a lot of college kids do who don't know what they want to do. And I didn't know what Wall Street was. I didn't know private equity probably didn't even exist at the time. I applied to law school. We were in state Virginia. So I applied to UVA, and I got in off the wait list. I think I was working at a Budweiser warehouse the summer after graduating from college, and got the call from the dean and said, hey, the spot's opened up. And so I jumped on it. Not sure if I really wanted to be a lawyer, but at least that was, again, for somebody who really didn't know business, really didn't know finance, really didn't know what Wall Street was. I saw some of my buddies from college heading off into that path. I went to what I knew other than military in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of lawyers and lobbyists. And so I went to law school, and I'll try to be brief, but I figured out in law school, I literally walked to the U.S. Armed Forces recruiting office in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I signed up for a Navy student program early in my first year of law school. So they didn't pay for law school, but there was an opportunity to help you with your loans, and I had some student loans. And it was, more importantly, just my opportunity to serve. And so I did 3 years at law school, got out of law school in 96, was obligated, committed to serving for 4 years in the Navy. And I was in the JAG Corps. So I was a criminal defense lawyer for 4 years in Norfolk, Virginia. I should have known growing up as a Navy military family. I wanted to go to the West Coast. I wanted San Diego. I wanted to be a prosecutor. And so I told, the detailer that, of course, they put you in Norfolk, Virginia in criminal defense. I should have asked for that and I would have gotten what I wanted.
Right.
So I had a great 4 years serving. And it was my way of serving. I certainly wasn't the sharp end of the spear, but it was a phenomenal experience for me and just very, very proud of the opportunity to serve. And it was eye-opening for me and expanding just to be a criminal defense lawyer and to kind of see it from the other side of having been, the son of a surface warfare officer to now being a criminal defense lawyer. And I did that for 4 years. And I know one of the things we touch on in this podcast is transitioning. I went into, probably unlike many of your listeners, I went into the Navy knowing that I was going to be a 4 or 6 years in and out. My wife had seen my mom, what she went through as a Navy spouse. We know that's hard, a hard lifestyle. We didn't want to move around. I wanted to serve, and then I wanted to kind of get out and get into the civilian world. And so I used the GI Bill to get a business degree at nights while I was active duty. So that was a great blessing to be able to kind of start to position myself away from law into business. And I wanted a job in investment banking, and ultimately through some relationships and some networking, I ended up having a few different offers to work at Wall Street investment firms. And so I did that for 4 years out of the Navy from 2000 until 2004. And then I left banking and joined a family office, which I also didn't know what that was, when I was in college in the Navy, but a very wealthy family outside of in Texas-based family. I joined a small group here in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm based now and where we've raised our kids. I joined a family office, and we did all the real estate investing for that family office before we started our own real estate private equity firm, myself and a couple of partners who I'm still partners with today. That was nearly 20 years ago. We started Iron Point as real estate focused private equity fund, multi-strategy. So our funds are roughly $500 million in total committed capital. We're on our 5th fund now. We'll be fundraising at the end of this year for our 6th fund. And along the way, we created a self-storage focused private equity fund. And fortunately, we were early in data centers. And so we formed a whole separate series of funds called IPI, which was, we got into data centers early. It was more about investing around technology related real estate before people really knew what a data center was. And luckily we leaned in, brought in a partner who had a lot of technology, fundraising and expertise and sort of the digital infrastructure ecosystem. And then we were real estate. And so we formed IPI and raised several multi-billion-dollar funds and sold that to a public company called Blue Owl in January of 2025. So it's kind of a long wind up, Beau. I hope that's helpful. Where I am today, I'm sort of back to focus just on Iron Point, which is where we started, is the multi-strat series of private equity funds with my 20 or so colleagues here, and same founders who continue to be partners and good friends. And so kind of back to focusing on that right now professionally.
That's awesome. It's a great story. There's so much in there that I think is interesting to unpack for our audience and for me too. First, an interesting anecdote. I ended up going to UVA undergrad, but the other place I visited was Dartmouth, and I'll never forget visiting because it was the first weekend of April 1989 when I'm getting ready to graduate. 85. First weekend of April. We fly up from New Orleans and it's snowing. And I'm like, I'm not sure New Orleans boy is going to make it here. It was a little rough. So, yeah, I visited and it did not work out for me up there. But
yeah, it's not for the weather, not for the faint of heart. My roommate was from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he showed up with his tank top on, and I don't think he put that back on until he graduated 4 years later. But Yeah, it's definitely the weather is, lacrosse is a winter sport up there, right? I mean, it's winter all the way through the end of May. Summer's great, the fall is great, but the winter is long.
Yeah, they tried to recruit me with Green Eggs and Ham, and that wasn't cutting it. I think the snow, the Green Eggs and Ham didn't outdo the snow. So, and interesting, when we had another guest on the podcast, I don't know if you ever come across Nate Fick. He's a little after your time, but Nate Fick's a Dartmouth grad, Marine Corps, and wrote a book called One Bullet Away. He's an amazing guy. He's someone you should know, but he's awesome. But he was a Dartmouth grad. He's one of our Dartmouth grad on the program. So, the number 2 Green Wave, on the program. So good stuff.
That's great. That's great. And I would love to meet Nate. I know of him, but I don't know him personally.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I'll connect you all up for sure. Well, I wanted to kind of first touch back to your point about just your initial transition from the Navy and kind of how you did it. Because, I mean, it's always about networking, right? And back when you were getting out of the Navy, we didn't have all the programs we have now, right? We didn't have any when I got out, 15 years ago. I mean, what was your approach? I mean, did you know you wanted to get into the private equity space? Obviously, you've gotten your law degree. You used that in the Navy, then went out and got your MBA. At what point did you kind of figure out, okay, did you focus on private equity? Kind of what was that process for you to determine that's what you want to do? Or was it just random talking to people and that was the opportunity? Or kind of what was that process like?
Originally, I focused on investment banking. And again, in college, I did well academically, I played sports, had fun, but I wasn't visiting the career counselor. And when my buddies were saying they were going off to Wall Street and banking, it sounded really, really boring. And so I thought, I'll do something more interesting. You've heard a little bit how I ended up at law school. So I didn't have a passion for law, but I did take some classes over at UVA's business school, Darden. And I realized I liked those classes more. I had seen where some of my peers, what they had done over the few years when I'm in law school. I started to see what they were doing and what banking was, what investment banking was, and it seemed really interesting. I knew they were working their butts off. I knew they were making some interesting money, but I thought more importantly, it seemed really interesting to be around capital formation and business models and what works and be just, of course, at that point, they were all, junior bankers, but they were learning a lot. And that between Darden business classes, between seeing what my buddies were doing, my brother-in-law was a young banker at the time and he got engaged to my sister. And so I learned from him a little bit. And so all of those made me say, okay, I'm going to get that business degree, night school at Old Dominion University, which was great. I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. It was a lot of work. Courtroom in the day. We had a couple of kids during that time. I was working long hours and then you do night, business degree at nights. And then on Sundays you're studying, but I really, really found it interesting. And really said, okay, investment banking, right? And I didn't care. One, as I reflect back, one thing that at the time in my life, you go to these banking interviews and people want to talk about, well, why Bear Stearns, why Lehman Brothers? Of course, both those firms are gone. And you would say, well, I hear your culture is wonderful. And culture, and I kind of thought it was a throwaway buzzword. I mean, culture is so important when you are transitioning out, finding a team, finding a company, finding a group who's people that you want to be with and want to work with. And that's hard to find in investment banking, just to be honest. But I really did laser in on trying to get a job, use the part-time business degree. While you're right, there weren't programs focused on sort of veterans programs, veterans on Wall Street, things like that at the time. It still helped a lot. I think it still helped a lot when people looked at my resume, obviously a non-traditional candidate. Most of the people I was competing for jobs with, were college, banking, maybe business school, then back to banking. And they, knew the ins and outs of the industry. For me, it was a much different background. So I kind of had to prove it in the interview that I could do the job, but it did jump out. And the military service really jumped out to people who saw that because there weren't a lot of Navy JAGs, but not much less, military officers or military members coming into and interviewing for banking jobs at the time. And I didn't know what private equity was, but I did have the good fortune of meeting Bill Conway, who is somebody that I really respect. He's a founder of the Carlyle Group. He's a Dartmouth grad. So I used every angle, every network,
Yeah.
every connectivity I had. There's no shame in it. I tell my kids that now. I will meet with anybody. I'll, use that network, pull on every single thread you can. And one of them was Bill Conway, founder of Carlyle Group. They weren't what they are today, but they were a growing, formidable investment group that I would have loved to have joined. I had a personal meeting with Bill Conway, and he explained to me, your background's interesting, but we don't hire guys like you. You need to go build your toolbox. Go do investment banking for 2 or 3 years, build that toolbox, and then come back and see me. So the conversation with Bill Conway, the sort of influences of my brother-in-law, my college buddies, all geared me toward trying to find something on Wall Street and investment banking. And I used UVA's recruiting office. They were nice enough. The Darden School was nice, even though I wasn't a business school grad, to let me go through their interview process to get myself in front of a few investment banks. And then, I did have friends who were working or junior bankers, but helped me out. And I ended up, my first job out of the Navy was with Alex Brown and Sons, which was later bought by Bankers Trust and Deutsche Bank. But at the time I joined was, I think, the largest or the oldest investment bank in the country, and really a great firm.
That's a great story too. It combines so much of what we talk about a lot in this program, and one of it is the networking piece of it. I mean, just talk to everybody, because you never know where the opportunities come from, and it's not necessarily the opportunity today. It's maybe the one in a few years, but have the conversations. I love that you hit on that, and I love the point that you made for our audience. That you do have, and you did have a non-traditional resume, right? Most of the guys getting out were, the top 10% at Ivy League schools, going right into investment banking. They knew it when they were undergrads, and they were grinding, and they were doing it. And you took that gap, right? And your resume looked different. But I think that's a good thing. That's kind of the pitch we make at the MilVet. Is like, look, if you can combine, the MBA with the military experience and real world leadership, and bring that together, I mean, that's a differentiator in the market, right? Because there's a million resumes that look the same as the guys that are doing the best in all these schools and their business schools, but that's a different thing. Obviously it's maybe not what got you the job, but at least it is a differentiator, I think, from what you looked like compared to a traditional candidate.
Absolutely. I got it. It helped me get the job. A few of the firms, actually, even though they didn't have the dedicated program, people saw that on my resume and wanted to help. And some of them were former service members also. And so I feel like, while I missed out on some opportunities because my resume didn't look like it maybe should look for that role, I also got some opportunities as a result of people pulling me into the system. And it's certainly, when you get in front of, whether it's a one-on-one interview or a 1-on-5 interview, and you have a chance to tell your story, the teamwork, the discipline, the camaraderie, the sense of service, the commitment to service, I think that you learn in the military that can't be faked. I think that comes through. And now I'm on the other side of things, and we're a small firm. We have, like I said, we have about 20 people here, so I'm not an active hirer. But we did, with our data center platform, we started a very large data center development company called Stack Infrastructure, which is now owned by Blue Owl. Stack has a veteran program. Blue Owl has a veteran program. So, and I will meet with anybody and just give them a little bit of a story on my history, because, again, I didn't know the lay of the land. It's not that complicated. It's the other dirty secret. It's not that hard, but absolutely, when I had those first interviews and the opportunities to be able to talk about, anybody who is called to military service is probably a good teammate, probably has, a different level of discipline and rigor, and probably the type of person you want on your team. So I think that's just for all of the listeners here today. Just know that going in, and that should be a major differentiator that hopefully sets you apart from the pack.
I love it. I mean, again, that's our main pitch a lot of times as an executive recruiter, is that the talent we're going to bring you is different because again, they're not your traditional just college to MBA, working on Wall Street. They have that plus the leadership piece of it, right? They have the experience. They can lead blue collar folks, but they can also talk to the board. They can read a P&L plus, right? So that's really something we try to harp on with our candidates and to our customers that, hey, if you want quality talent, this veteran thing matters. It can make a big difference for you. So I love that you brought that up. I'd like to kind of switch gears a little bit and unpack a little bit about what you talked about because I think in the next step in your career was going to a family-owned fund, right? And there's a lot of them out there. I think people don't know what the heck that means. Like, I don't think 95% of the country probably knows how many of them there are and what they do. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how you got there and what they are in general? I mean, I think it's like almost like an educational process for our audience because there's so many of those opportunities out there that people just don't know exist in the world.
Yeah. So in 2004, I was introduced to the Bass family out of Fort Worth, Texas. Sort of legendary investors, 70s and 80s, the Bass brothers. They were known. They were sort of almost private equity. They had an incredible run of investing in and building companies and creating wealth for themselves and their partners and their colleagues. And they're very generous family office, also philanthropically. So I was fortunate enough in 2004, coming out of banking, to be introduced to members of the Robert M. Bass family office on the real estate side. I didn't really do real estate, but I figured if I'd done some tech investment banking and healthcare, and I could understand finance, and I worked with some great colleagues who were longtime real estate investors. So I joined the real estate arm of the Robert Bass family office, and I really didn't understand fully what a family office was at the time. Effectively, it's like any other institutional investor. Nowadays we expanded and formed Iron Point. The Bass family continues to be a major investor of ours and sponsor of ours. We're still very close and very appreciative of the start we got with the Bass family. But now we have major college endowments, foundations, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, both private and public. And all of them have a duty to preserve capital and grow capital for whatever their mission is. Just so happens in the family office, they have created wealth over a generation or over multiple generations, and they want to invest it just like that endowment, just like that pension fund. They can be a little bit more creative and flexible. And so I joined as one of a member of the Robert M. Bass family office, looking for good investments for the Bass family. But it was entrepreneurial, but you had an opportunity to invest alongside. So you put your money where your mouth was, which I really liked. Comparing it to investment banking, the culture wasn't quite what the military was, right? Everybody's fighting for their year-end bonus, and then they go to the next shop, right? They kind of try to get better title, better bonus, and they move on. Or you just never felt that same teamwork and camaraderie. I did feel that in the family office environment. I did feel the alignment of actually putting a little bit of money, and trust me, we had no money. I mean, a negative net worth at the time, as you can imagine. But so I would borrow money to put into the deals and borrow money to, help start what is Iron Point. But I invested in the deals that we did with the Bass family, and I invested personally in the formation of Iron Point. But that's what family offices are. Now there's so many more. I mean, look, I'm in Washington, D.C. Josh Harris buys the Commanders for $6 billion, right? And he, built his wealth. He's about my age, I'm mid-50s. He's maybe a little bit older. Built his wealth in Apollo, and now he has his own family office. And there's a lot of family offices out there that are competing head on with some of the private equity funds that are competing head on with some of the institutional investors. So that's certainly a destination and something to be thoughtful of for some of your listeners today, who want that finance background, who want to be in investments. And there's family offices that are, on the relatively small side, so let's say doing small, few $100 million of investable assets. Usually, the family offices that, are investing and competing with institutional capital are $1 billion or multi-billion dollar balance sheets to invest. So that's And that hopefully answers the question, Bo, a little bit about what a family office is and what I was fortunate enough to step into in 2004.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot more of them out there than I was aware of when I kind of got into this space a few years ago, and it was something maybe I'd heard about, and you just think it's a rich guy that has some money and he invests a little bit, but it's I think, but to your early point too, but I'm sure the culture of a family office is very different than going into a PE firm or going into investment banking, right? It's a family, right? I mean, you become part of that family. I mean, by nature, they're probably going to be smaller in general terms, right? I mean, relatively big is that's not small money, but it's just smaller, and it's very much the culture is the family, right? I mean, that's what sets the tone for that, and a little different from the leadership. I would think is, again, it's kind of one or a handful of people that have been doing it for generations leading it. Just I think an interesting consideration if you want to get into the space. You often hear PE or you hear VC, but you don't necessarily think about the family office piece of it. And there are some amazing opportunities out there. I think it's, I mean, obviously it takes knowing somebody in the family typically to feel to how to work that piece, but it's a different path that a lot of folks don't maybe consider when they're looking to get into the broader space. And I think your journey from there and to take it, I guess we'll talk about then, and how did that turn into the Iron Point piece? I mean, you said you wanted to break off on your own. I mean, obviously you're still working with the family in some capacities, but it all seemingly went very well and was amicable. But what was that decision process like?
Well, first of all, in the family office piece, you're right. I mean, I think just like private equity 30 years ago wasn't really a thing, right? I
Yeah,
mean, you started to see the formation of some of these private equity vehicles and hedge funds and alt managers now. And now they're traded on the public markets. I mean, take Carlyle Group, for example, and the run and the growth ride that they have, and now they're a publicly traded major company. Family offices similarly. I mean, I think that they're by nature private, right? Most of them, they are family, and they want privacy in terms of what investments they're making and how they're making decisions, and how they're managed. But there's a lot more of them now, and they're a lot bigger, and they're a much more important piece of sort of the investment ecosystem than even when I joined the Bass family in 2004. I mean, it's the growth in all things PE and investments and everything. I mean, so it's a different industry, and it's a relatively new industry. In terms of our path, I joined, as I said, in 2004. The the I joined expecting that we would try to raise our own independent real estate funds with the support and sponsorship of the Bass family. They went they were going in a little bit of a different direction. They had different funds and different expertise around the family, and they decided it was better to go raise outside capital around that. And so there were a series of not affiliated, but sort of sister funds. Let's say we knew each other in different groups. Everybody was out going, raising their own capital, and we were sort of last in line on the real estate side. And so it was sort of part of the plan. Certainly helped to have a track record. Certainly helped to have a seed investment from the family. Uh, but it was still a lot of work to raise a first time private equity fund in 2007. So we had a final closing in September of 2008. So as the GFC was getting real, we were closing capital for our first fund. So that's a little bit of the story of and then that was, then it was fund one invested well in the teeth of the GFC, and then fund two to fund three to fund four. I can't believe we're on fund five now. It's been quite a journey, lots of ups and downs, but I'm really proud of what we've done at Iron Point.
that's awesome. No, it's a great story. And again, every journey is a little bit different, and I think yours is interesting just to see, what you hit to gain the experience that you talked about in that interview of. I mean, you didn't go work for Carlisle, but you added the tools in your toolbox to make you successful moving forward. So you didn't have right away. Obviously, that continued to open doors, and just kind of every path's a little different. And one door closes, one door opens, and you just kind of figure it out. So I love to see that and hear that. I, you know, What, as we kind of just talk about in more bigger picture for veterans out there, I mean, what would you say are maybe I say call them lessons learned, things you wish you knew then that you know now? Like for folks that want to get into the space, what are things that you would share that, man, if I had to do it all over again, this is what I would do differently, or this is maybe a resource or a book or anything that you can kind of share that would be of help for folks that are, in this world today or looking to get into it.
I mean, one, resources and books. I leaned on that heavy. I mean, it sounds dated, but the availability of online resources is certainly expanded today compared to what it was even in the early 2000s when I was kind of going through my search. Um, I'd say two things. I mean, I went and they kind of go together, and maybe they're contradictory in some ways. I got into banking, and I felt like I was so far behind. I joined as an investment banking associate when I was almost 30 years old with two kids and a third on the way. And other investment banking associates were 24, 25 years old. And my high school buddies were already VPs or directors, or some cases managing directors. And so I felt like I was so far behind, which was good because I was, right? I, between 3 years of law school and 4 years of Navy, and then trying to get into banking and finance, it made me work with a different sense of urgency. And I felt like, okay, I've got to work. I got to get 2 years of work in for every year. I need to catch up, right? So that was a good thing, and I think that that's a lesson learned. And I think in any environment, that's kind of a healthy mindset. I've got to always be, working really, really, really hard and earning my stripes, so to speak. But also, I wish I had a little different perspective of, and I tell this to a lot of the younger folks who meet with or people transitioning out of the military with these different non-traditional backgrounds and non-linear path to banking or finance or private equity. The career is long. Your career path. I mean, my dad, I mentioned him earlier. I mean, he's a hero in my life, and I'm fortunate to have had him as a role model. He's still working at the age of 84, not because he necessarily has to, but he enjoys it. He enjoys being around the team. He's still learning. He likes to have a purpose, a mission, and a team to be a part of. And so I think of, one, you're getting out of the military, you're going to feel like you're behind the curve. Just take a different mindset and say, this is a long career. And as long as I'm doing what I need to do every day, every week, and learning a little bit and being the best teammate, you will be a success and you will find your path. So I think that's it. And then the other thing is, I think we all coming out, I talk to so many veterans or soon to be veterans who are coming out, and there's this uncertainty, there's this fear, there's this idea that the civilian world is so much different than the military. And it's not really, right? We all have different skill sets. And that's one thing that's great about the military. And you mentioned blue collar, white collar. And, in the military, you move around, you get a different job every 2 to 3 years, and it forces you to learn something new. It forces you to rely on the experts. If it's officer enlisted, you go onto a ship, a warship, and there's a guy who knows that engine room, boiler room, radar room better than you do, and you rely on that person, right? And they've got expertise that you don't have, but that doesn't mean you can't learn it. Doesn't mean you can't know enough to make good decisions. At the end of the day, I think what's unique is having good business judgment. As I use the word teammate a lot, being a good teammate, working hard, trust your judgment, and know that there's no secret sauce in any business. You can learn it pretty quickly. And so some of the mystery, every business has their acronyms. Every business has sort of this sense of mystery and difficulty around it. Whereas, look, it's not that hard. What you did in the military, whether you're 4 years in the JAG like myself, or 20-year career, out in the field, that carries over. Those leadership lessons, those lessons that you have, that carries over and is very valuable and very unique. And it's not just going back to our conversation earlier. It's not just that first interview that becomes a differentiator. That's a lifetime career differentiator for veterans, I believe.
That's awesome advice. I mean, again, because so many folks I talk to do feel like they're behind. Hey, yeah, I'm 30. I did my 5, 8 years, and all these guys started when they were 22. I mean, that is some of the best advice I think you'd have. It's like you have time. I mean, you have to work hard. Don't get me wrong, but it's not. You can do it. You can do it, guy. You're a living example. That's why I love these podcasts. I mean, you're an example of exactly that. You came in non-traditional, 30 years old, started your career, and have been unbelievably successful. And I love that, to reinforce that with the folks that are, in a similar path, that are just getting out now and just getting their MBA or finishing up, and like, man, I'm so behind. But like, yeah, and hopefully it is a long path. I don't know if I want to work when I'm 84 like your dad, but good on you, man. Good on you.
Well, at least get rid of that mindset. No, I want to retire when I'm 45 or I'm 50 or I'm 55.
Yeah,
Why? Right? What are you going to
yeah,
do? Be part of a team, be part of a company, be part of a mission. And if you kind of like say, okay, this is a long-term decision,
yeah.
hopefully a long-term team I'm joining, you've got time.
I love it. I love it. Well, as we get ready to wrap things up, I would like to kind of a final thoughts on. I know you are very involved in a myriad of different charities and just nonprofits and things. Anything you want to share about kind of what you're doing out there in the world, to maybe whether it's helping veterans or just in general. I know faith's a big part of your life. We've talked about that before. But anything you want to wrap up with that's kind of maybe help you be successful, or ways you're giving back these days? Kind of your few minutes on the show to share a little
Yeah,
bit more
for
about
sure.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Bo. So still super focused on Iron Point here, enjoying that. Hopefully I can be a better business leader here than I was over the last 20 years. So I'm focused on that, enjoying that. But and Bo, you and I have spoken before. We have a common background in Jesuit education. I was fortunate enough to go to Gonzaga High School here in DC, where all boys school. It's all about being a man for others, and that was mentioned my dad and his service, and that was part of my call to serve, my patriotism, but also just this the Jesuit Ignatian spirituality of be a person for others, and so that stuck with me then. And while I have been working hard to make money for my family, I've also been very intentional about finding ways to give back, even when it was just time. And so, just a few things that I'm proud of. St. Matthew's Cathedral is here right next door to me in Washington, D.C. We have a local population here of homeless and underprivileged men and women, and I give to their. I volunteer my time at a Monday morning food pantry that they have and breakfast service that they have. So I'm proud of that. I give back to Gonzaga. I'm on the board of Gonzaga High School now. I'm so fortunate that my parents made me go to a private school, but I was lucky enough to go to Gonzaga, and that stuck with me. So I'm giving back there. I'm on the board of the Washington Jesuit Academy. This is my second uh, tenure on that board. It's an incredible mission. It's fourth through eighth grades, young boys through eighth grade from families that need just a little extra, whether they're not getting it in the public school, whatever it is. And so it's nearly tuition free for these families, but it's a phenomenal mission in education and well-run school here in DC. So I've given a lot of my time. I've helped them build the network and contribute financially there. And we track those kids through high school. And then we have a graduate support program where I think it's a greater than 85, 90% connect rate of these young men now coming back, working at the school and engaged in the school. So that's kind of me giving back to the education angle, especially for those who maybe aren't don't have the same resources many do. And then on the military side, one, I will always talk to a veteran, find out, he or she, give them some guidance. I'll talk to a young person from out of college, whether, they didn't serve, just helping people navigate that next step in terms of their career. And then I'm involved in the Yellow Ribbon Fund. I've been a board member of the Yellow Ribbon Fund for more than 10 years. Yellow Ribbon Fund is also sort of DC centric, but we have a national footprint with chapters in most major military communities in the country. We have headquarters now in Boca Raton, Florida. We do some retreats for service members of or veterans who have faced injury, typically in combat, and their families. But then right here, and kind of the core original mission was post 9/11 at Walter Reed, when service members were coming back after being injured, and life-changing event, as you can imagine, for not only the service member but for the family as well, who now gets the call. They have to be in Washington, D.C., a place they've never been. They have to come to Walter Reed. Their family members going through major surgery, which, as you know, Beau, it's not just one and done. It's not just 2 or 3 months or 6 months at Walter Reed. It's a lifetime of surgeries and treatments coming back and forth. The military doesn't pay all the times for housing and for transportation locally here for that family. And so we provide that gap funding. I'm really proud of that and our mission at the Yellow Ribbon Fund. So those are the kind of places where I give back. And that's about all I have capacity for, but they're all really important to me.
That's awesome. It touches my heart as a fellow Jesuit grad and a guy that truly tries to be a man for others in everything that I do. I love to hear that what you're doing for your community, what you're doing in the time you're willing to spend with veterans that are just interested in having a cup of coffee and in this journey themselves right now. So thank you so much for the time, for sharing your journey. I know it will be impactful for a lot of our guests out there, and look forward to our paths crossing again soon in the future, Tom. Thanks again for the time today.
Great, Beau, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. For more content, follow us on Instagram at TheMilVet or on LinkedIn. Join us at an upcoming event or learn more on our website, TheMilVet.org. Feel free to email us directly at leadership@TheMilVet.org. Thank you so much and take care.